The Podcast Lawyer is starting soon. The Podcast Lawyer is starting soon. Well, hello everybody, and happy New Year's Eve. It is December 31st, 2020, and it is it's 4 p.m. like I do every Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. This is the Podcast Lawyer Live, and I am the Podcast Lawyer, Gordon Firemark. And I'm here to talk about all kinds of good stuff and fun and stuff like that. And today I thought I would talk about New Year's resolutions, things that we can do in the new year to podcast better, more effectively, more safely, and just generally smarter. So first off, I want to say, invite everybody, if you're here watching, I would love it if you would say hello in the comments so I know who's watching. And if you're watching on a replay, say replay so I know that you're watching then also. I'm looking forward to just seeing who's watching. So say hello to me, and I know it takes a few seconds for that to shake out, and so I'm going to just jump right in to my New Year's resolutions for podcasting smarter and better. It's Rick Savoya. Nice to see you, Rick. Tell me what kind of wine you're going to be opening tonight to celebrate the new year. I am personally, I think I'm going to not drink tonight. The last few nights I've had drinks. I haven't slept well, so I'm going to see what happens if I don't drink. Anyway, nice to have you here, Rick. Thanks for being here. And if you're watching live, please pop a note in the comments so I can say hello. My New Year's resolutions for my podcasting and podcast-related business is to give them the attention that they really deserve, to do things right, to do things just a little bit bigger. You know, I'm still thinking about it, trying to figure out exactly what I'm gonna focus on in terms of like a metric and so on. But that's really what I'm focusing on. My feeling is, if something is worth doing, it is worth doing right. It is worth doing well. It is worth doing sort of on an all-in, play full out, bring your A game every single time. And I think I've let it slide a little bit on some of my podcasts. I had one show that I was doing late last year and into the beginning of this year, and I just sort of let it fade out for a while, and I resurrected it a few weeks ago, and I'm very happy to say I'm back in the saddle with that one. My Entertainment Law Update podcast has been going strong every month for the last 12 and a half years, and I'm very proud of that. So that's something I'm happy about. It went well this year. We had 12 solid episodes. It's a monthly show. It's a lot of setup, a lot of build up and prep, and then we do it live, or live to drive, I should say. It's a Skype call. We're done, and up it goes. No editing, no nothing, and I like it that way. I think it gives some authenticity to it. Rick is saying, so tonight's wine is going to be Lily's Collection 2016 Red Blend. Sounds good. Sounds good. I have a favorite wine, Rick. I don't know if you've ever had Penfold's Bin. I forget what number it was. Bin 289 was the one. It's a Shiraz Cabernet blend, and it's a fantastic wine. It's getting a little harder to find. That year was, let me see, that must have been probably probably 1988, 1998 or 99 probably was the year that I'm thinking of. Comes out of Australia, and it's Penfolds wines are really good. You say you like the Baby Yoda, the Grogu shirt, by the way. My family, today we are all wearing our Baby Yoda shirts. My wife and daughter went to Target or something the other day and came home with shirts for everybody. And so one of my sons asked me to put it on today, and little did I know that everybody was going to wear it. So, yeah. All right, so let's continue on my little discussion about New Year's resolutions. I've got to get my iPad to open here. There we go. Give it the attention it deserves. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And for me, I want to also encourage. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, maybe not. But anyway. Yeah. So if it's worth doing, it's doing right. And for me, that means. And this is my advice to the rest of the world. If you're going to do this, be businesslike about it and expect the same of others. I know there's a lot of folks out there that want to have guests on and they just want to be really informal and casual. And to my way of thinking, that isn't giving it the attention it deserves. That isn't doing things right. You gotta do what's right. And that means taking it seriously enough to do what it deserves, what you deserve from it, because you get what you give in this situation. So I want to say, if you're not using a podcast release with your guests, please start. We're starting to see more and more of the friction between guests and hosts when the guest either doesn't feel like they put their best foot forward, or things have changed. A year later, they want the episode taken down or whatever. If you have that release, it puts you in the driver's seat. I'm not saying you don't take it down. I'm saying you don't have to take it down if it's not consistent with the way you operate. Also, I'll say if you run a sponsored show, that sponsor is paying you to put out that show. And if you have to take an episode down, the sponsor isn't getting what they paid for. And I have seen a situation with sponsors coming back to podcasters and demanding a make good, or asking for a reduction in the next month's sponsorship fees or something like that. You can avoid all of that. If you have that release, you're in a position to make business decisions about these things and be in the driver's seat. Otherwise, I'm afraid to say the guest is often able to strong arm or coerce the outcome they want. So I like to say, get it in writing, get a release. If you have co-hosts, get something in writing with them. Now's a good time, beginning of the year, say, hey, let's get everything straight. Let's get it organized. Let's figure out whose show is it? How are we going to divvy up the work? How are we going to divvy up the money if there's money to be coming in? How are we going to divvy up the expenses if there's money going out? And how are we going to resolve any kinds of disagreements or disputes? Who's in charge, right? Who does what work? Those kinds of things. Get that in writing. Another thing I'm going to do, and I encourage everybody out there to do, pick a metric and focus on that metric for an extended period of time. Say for a whole calendar quarter, you're going to focus on getting this one metric to move in the direction you want. Costs down, revenues up, subscribers up, whatever. Pick that thing, and every action you take ought to be focused on getting that metric to move. Now, sometimes there are intermediate metrics that drive a larger or a higher metric. Pick something that you can manage, right? If your goal is to increase your subscriber base, well, some of the ways is to do that is just to ask for people to subscribe more often, right? So how many asks are you going to do? How often? On what media? Are you going to expand your reach by going into another tool? Like maybe you've never done an Instagram, so maybe this is the year you do Instagram. Then look at the metrics for that and pick a metric there. Maybe it's one post a day on Instagram or a Facebook Live every week or something like that. All of these are the kinds of things that you can do just one step at a time. And if you're consistent and methodical about it, you will see results when you give it some extended time. One of the things a lot of people don't do is give it the time it needs for the needle to move. So there you go. If you're going to be in business, be a business, right? I harp on this a lot too. Should you form an LLC or a corporation? I don't know. It depends on you. But Should you think about it? Absolutely. Should you consult with somebody like me about it? I think so. Ask me some questions. Ask me what I think. Tell me a little bit about your business, and I'll give you my thoughts. So I've got a couple other comments here. Rick, we talked about the wine. We talked about the Baby Yoda. Daniel Craig, I'm happy you're doing lives again. You give great info. Happy I'm doing lives again. Thank you. Daniel, did I stop doing lives? I've been doing them every Thursday for quite a while. And I hope I'm visible. So thank you. And thanks for watching. And I appreciate the kudos. It's really nice to know that I'm having a little bit of an impact. That is one of my big resolutions. In fact, that may be my word for the year of 2020 is impact. I don't know yet. I've got to sit. Tonight's the night. I always sit down on New Year's Eve and I sort of write out my plan and figure out what's my theme for the year. What are my sort of long range goals for the year. And maybe you just stopped watching for a while. Yeah, well, one of my goals is going to keep you guys interested and involved in watching the show. So I do this every Thursday afternoon, 4 p.m. I usually have a relatively small audience of people, and that's another thing. I want to increase that. If anybody has any tips or ideas on how I can get more people to watch these Facebook Lives, maybe it's the time of day that I'm choosing. I don't know. I'm on Pacific time. I was trying to sort of do it at the end of my work day and the beginning of people's evenings so that on the East Coast they can, whatever. But yeah, this is strategy kind of stuff. So if you're going to be a business, be a business. Think about forming an entity. If not forming an entity, at least write out a mission statement, write out a plan, have a business plan, and treat it like a business. Open a separate bank account, put the money in, spend out of that account for business expenses, those kinds of things. Keep good records. Although, normal is still common sense, but unfortunately, so many creative people just don't apply common sense to their creative business. As one guru that I like to follow says, something like, common sense really isn't all that common. So maybe it's not called common sense. Maybe it's not really common sense. So if it's going to be a business. Respecting the copyrights and trademarks, the intellectual property of other people is huge. I think 2021 is the year we're going to start seeing more and more smaller podcasters getting slapped around by copyright holders and trademark holders. And so it's time to start really paying attention. The music question has been coming up more and more because people want to do these music shows. And I'll tell you, the big platforms aren't going to carry your show if you've got unlicensed music in it. We do need to figure some things out. I was having this conversation inside my private group, the Legit Podcast Pro group, earlier today. By the way, if you'd like to become a member of the Legit Podcast Pro group, come on over to legitpodcastpro.com and register there, and then you can come and join the group, and I'd love to have you. We talk about this kind of stuff on a frequent basis, business strategies and how to make a go of it as a business and as a professional in podcast or with podcasting. Anyway, the intellectual property issues are increasing. One of the issues we have to figure out is how do you let the platform know that you actually have a license for the music that you've licensed? And how do you let them know so that your stuff doesn't get flagged and you're constantly playing that reverse whack-a-mole of having to tell them, YouTube and others, hey, I have a license for this, when they flag it and say you don't or think you don't. So we got to figure out a mechanism for that. I think it's as easy as the platform's putting in a checkbox or having some kind of a tag we put in the metadata for our shows, something like that, and maybe there's a consequence for falsely tagging things. We got to figure it out. The other area is the other side of it. We've got to figure out a way to engage the music industry to get them to pay more attention to podcasting as a medium and help us find ways that podcasters can use music. We can do music critique shows, that we can do music fan shows, that we can do just shows that have a little bit of music in them without having to jump through quite so many hoops, or at least make those hoops easier to jump through. And just more fees, more practical. If there's a one-stop shop, if there's a one common form of license and you just ask for it, they tell you a price and you do it, maybe that makes it simpler. But, ASCAP and BMI made made the broadcast radio and television industries really sort of possible, because they set up these blanket licensing schemes or these logged licensing schemes. And that's sort of, along the lines of being businesslike. If you're businesslike, you can tell your music licensors, how many downloads you have, how much music you're using for how long, and those kinds of things. If you're not keeping records, they're going to assume that you're bigger than you think you are, and they're going to want to charge you more money, those kinds of things. So, the other thing I think we should be thinking about in the new year is really pressing the vendors that we deal with, the hosting services, the the Libsyns and the Blueberries and everybody else, to come together to lobby the music industry, to say, hey, we're here, we're not going away, let's make this work, we want to pay you, we want to make this possible. And the other side of that is, of course, we have to be willing to pay. If we're going to use other people's stuff in our shows, we got to be willing to pay for it. It has to be a reasonable price, of course, but don't expect something for free. You don't build your house using lumber that you took off of a lumber yard without paying for the lumber. You don't build your podcast around music without paying for the music. These are the raw materials that you are using to assemble something that you are creating and you're owning, right? So you got to be willing to pay for those raw materials. Music is a raw material. Talent is a raw material. You wouldn't ask your editor to edit your show for no pay, at least not for very long. If you're making money, they should be making money. Now, the music industry is saying, hey, wait, you should be making money, so we make money. It doesn't matter. If you choose not to charge, or you choose not to get big enough to where you have a viable business model, that's not the music industry's problem, right? So, yeah, Rick, that's what I was talking about. Rick is saying the YouTube bots and copyright trolls don't, and I'm gonna distinguish between those two, because the YouTube bot certainly doesn't care if you have licensed the music or if it's your own, and they flag it because YouTube takes their word. Well, okay, fair enough. But if you can waive a license at them, then you win that dispute. So what I'm suggesting is YouTube ought to have a way of you telling them, I use licensed music in my content, and if you get a flag about it, this should open a conversation and not trigger a takedown. Now, that may mean we have to do something about the DMCA a little bit, but my thinking is if you've asserted to YouTube that you have a license on the video that you submit, and they identify it and say, hey, wait a minute, that passes, that their bot spots it and says, hey, we're going to flag this, we think this is copyright infringement, they should be able to check for that meta tag or check for that checkbox and then take your word for it. Now, if the owner of the material comes and says, hey, that's unlicensed, we didn't issue a license for that, that raises a bigger question, and we have to have a discussion. But most of what's happening on YouTube these days is automated. That's their content ID system. And you're right, they have put the burden of proof on the little guy, but the truth is that burden isn't that hard. If you've got a license, you can show it. You wave it in someone's face and say, I've got permission. Rick, I'm going to tell you, YouTube's system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed, and it was designed to keep YouTube out of legal hot water. And it was designed that way after over a decade of litigation between YouTube and Viacom. And it's working exactly the way they want it to. It's flagging things, and as it should. It should be able to say, hey, there's stuff that's in there that we already have in our database, and then their job is to take it down if they don't want to get sued by those content owners. It's called red flag knowledge. If they know it's there and they don't take it down, they are going to be liable under the DMCA. So then it's then incumbent on the person who uploaded that to be able to explain why it's there. And maybe there's another situation where we've got to be able to say, hey, we know, yes, I know this material has underlying copyrighted material, and it's fair use, and here's why. Maybe it's a few checkboxes. Maybe it's, as I said, it's some kind of a meta tag. The technology's there. We can figure this out. It's going to take some code, and it's going to take some legal wrangling and so on. Yeah, Rick, it catches some innocent. The false positives is definitely a problem. But this is one of those, one of those scenarios where we have to figure out a way to address it, not just stand around complaining about it. So let's reach out to the technology folks. Let's reach out to the YouTube folks and the Facebook folks and all the other places where, let's face it, media content is becoming a bigger thing. And maybe it's somebody has to come up with some technology that they can market to us or to the platforms that says, hey, we're going to be the licensing police, the clearance house for this. So anyway, a couple other resolutions for me for this year. Well, not resolutions, just something else I want to just get out there and say is there are a couple things that have really shifted in the last year. The first one, as I was already saying, is being businesslike is no longer optional. We have to be serious about what we're doing, and that's the licensing, and that's all this stuff. So I have a couple thoughts here. The old school ways of doing things are becoming just that, old school, and maybe a little bit outdated and passé. One of those is how do you market? How do you monetize things? The old thought was figure out who your target audience is and find out where they hang out and hang out there and listen to what they're saying and then start offering them solutions to their problems. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't work, but I'm saying nowadays it comes to more than that, because your solution to their problem may fall on deaf ears. You may have, there's so many places that people are hanging out. The audience is getting really diffuse, right? So my feeling is we have to build a place where our audience, our intended customers, are going to want to hang out. We have to build community. It's no longer enough just to solve a problem and here, I've got the thing, you should buy it. You got to build that know and like and trust factor. And the way to do that is to build a community around the problem, around your audience and their needs. Be everywhere they are, but engage them and get them into your tribe. This is not new. It's just a new way of thinking. It's not about identify and find your target audience. It's about build a community for your target audience. Get them to engage with you. Get them to feel like a part of something. And then they will be open to your sales message. Now, a podcast is a great, great, great way to build that sense of community. Give your listeners a nickname. I don't know what I would call the listeners of Entertainment Law Update or whatever, but, or even the Podcast Lawyer group, but Legit Podcast Pro, my Facebook group, that's the thing. They're legit pros, right? So give them a name, give them a sense of identity that aligns with what you're doing. Build that community and bring them in so they can feel like a part of something. And then their buying behavior will be buying or consuming behavior, if it's listening or that your goal is, will be motivated by remaining and feeling a part of that community. I think that's a huge shift that we've seen in the last couple of years. And let's take a few minutes to think about how we can do that going forward in 2021. Another one, the old idea of being yourself, being authentic. People want to connect with people. Again, yes, it's true. They do. They want to have a connection with people. That know, like, and trust is about people. But trust also relies on having a sense of stability, of foundations, right? And for me, I think people want to do business with businesses. If you're out looking for sponsors for your podcast, guess what? If you're just a one-off podcast producer, sponsors are going to have a hard, it's a lot of work for them to deal with one at a time with producers. But if you're a business, if you're in the business of podcasting, it's a little easier. They'd much rather deal with a company than a person. They want to deal with a person at the company and have that personal relationship. But they want the company, the stability of knowing that business is there. And sometimes it's just subtle. Even if you're a one-person operation, having a company name and a separate corporate identity can really make a difference. People don't like to give their money to amateurs and hobbyists and hope for the best. If you're going to go pro, Go pro. If you're going to be a business, be a business. Get legit, go pro, and make money podcasting. That's my mantra these days. And the way to do that is to form your business entity, protect your intellectual property, respect everybody else's intellectual property, build a team, use contracts, get it in writing, and when you go out to sell, doing it in a way that your customers, your advertisers, your sponsors, whoever it is that's paying you, recognizes that they're doing business with someone they can count on. That's what I'm talking about here. I think that is all I really wanted to say. If anybody has questions or comments they want to share, I would love to do that. And if you haven't already said hello in the comments, please do. I want to know who's watching. And we'll talk about, what do you have planned for the new year? Any resolutions you've made for your going pro, getting legit in podcasting? Late in the day for me to be drinking Diet Coke. Maybe that's why I'm not sleeping at night. Maybe the wine will help. Anyway, what else is going on with you? What do you have planned for 2021? What do you have planned? Let me see. Someone else said something else. Oh, Rick, thank you, by the way. Choosing the right time to go live is a tough call. Yeah, it's something I wrestle with. I have, my days are busy. And I try not to get distracted by my technology and these things in the middle of my workday. Rick has resolved not to make any New Year's resolution. You know what? I am sort of on board with that, even though that's the topic of the discussion today. New Year's resolutions are aspirational, hopeful, wishful thinking for a lot of people, I think. And sort of what I was talking about earlier is, setting goals is also a little bit aspirational and wishful thinking. I think having a New Year's intention is different. Having a theme for the year and an overriding message or mission. I will do this. I will be this way. Is a little different, I think, and so that's what I'm trying to do. My goal is to have an impact. I want to help 10,000 podcasters. 10,000. And even goals, though, Rick, I think are aspirational in their way. I want to climb to the top of that mountain. I hope I can make $10,000 in a month or $20,000 or whatever it is your goal is for revenue. It's not an intentional approach to accomplishing that goal. So I like to do intention setting. This month, I will generate this much money. I will do it this way. Here's how. You got to break it down into more than that. Russell says, objective, getting the puzzle pieces in place that can take my business to be at least ramen profitable by the end of the year. All right, Russell. Thank you. Ramen profitable. Okay. Let's say it's premium ramen at least, okay? The kind you get in a restaurant, not the kind you buy in the store in the 10-pack for $5 or whatever it is. Yeah, set the goal and develop a plan. Exactly. But again, a plan is good, but having, just a couple of those actions that you're going to take consistently and that you're going to watch a metric, that's really the trick, I think. Consistent action in the direction of your goals. And so as I said, impact, I'm going to help 10,000 podcasters. I'm going to do a Facebook Live every single Thursday. I may change the day, but I'm going to do at least once a week on this subject, the podcast legal stuff. I'm going to be in my Legit Podcast Pro group at least a couple of times a week talking about ways to make money, to turn podcasting from a hobby into a business, to be business-like, to avoid problems, those kinds of things. I'm blogging, I'm doing all my content. All of those are content creation things. I also plan to be more intentional about advertising my services and my products. And I have set some dates for specific things. And when I say being more intentional about having that impact, it is actually designing the whole year's worth of messaging tonight rather than coming at it willy-nilly. When I say I'm going to be more deliberate and give it the attention that it deserves, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's much easier to create content and to do your marketing and all those kinds of things if you have a plan, or if you know what's supposed to happen today, rather than if you sit down, oh, today's the day I'm supposed to do some marketing. Well, what do I do? Well, now you got to think about what, as well as, the specifics. So having it all laid out, do the planning on a longer range. I like to do quarterly sprints. Basically, I'm going to do this quarter. I'm going to get this accomplished by this date. So I have some goals that I'm thinking about for Q1 of 2020. My birthday is January 9th, and that for me is a triggering date for a couple of things for me. The month of January is a runway period. The month of February is an engagement period, and the month of March will be more of a selling focus on generating interest in particular products and services. And of course, my law practice and my teaching. I got a lot going on. So I'm excited about 2021. 2020 has been a dumpster fire, if you ask me. So 2021 can only be an improvement. We've got this pandemic, this virus. However you feel about the virus and however you feel about how it's been handled, I think we've got to confront the fact that there's this thing that's messing up the economy, messing up the people's lifestyles, people's enjoyment of life, and I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we got off to a slow start. We had some, I'm going to say it, we had some failures of leadership in the beginning, and I think some other people have sort of stepped up and taken charge and just done what needed to be done. Did what needed to be done, and I'm encouraged by that. But there's been a lot more than just this virus, just this pandemic. The pandemic isn't going away tomorrow. First of the year doesn't change anything. The inauguration day doesn't change anything immediately for the pandemic. But all of these things can be psychologically empowering if we start being more positive. And I want to get into the law of attraction and positive thinking and all that. But if we go into the year optimistically and feeling grateful for the things we do have and the opportunities ahead, I think that can only work to our benefit. If we go in feeling negative and down, well, we're setting a tone for things there too. So another word for me for the year, I think, is going to be optimism. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Let's see. So Russell says, January 9th, there will be much rejoicing in the Shire. It's funny. I was actually born in a Shire. I was born in Oxfordshire, England, to be exact. Thank you for that, Russell. Rick says, already have my your birthday toast on my list for tonight. I guess I have to watch tonight. Are you going live tonight, Rick? Same birthday as your sister-in-law. Oh, cool. Cool. Is that your wife's sister or your brother's wife? And Russell, Gordon, when virus schmirus is finally over, do you see the economy and podcasting especially as being like letting the bulls of Pamplona out of the pen? That's a great question, Russell. I think you're going live tonight, Rick. Good. I'll try to tune in. Russell, I think that the letting the bulls out of the pen of Pamplona is what happened when the pandemic lockdown started back in, I want to say, April and May of this year. We saw an uptick in the number of podcasts being created. I think that was also met by a decline. I don't remember all the numbers. I haven't been paying that close attention to the numbers, but I think there was a decline in listenership sort of that started around the same time. That could be attributed to people being home, not commuting, or focused on other things and just not listening to their podcasts. It could also be that there was more to choose from, and so supply went up and demand dipped a little bit for any given particular show. Will the end of the pandemic or the end of the virus being a problem change things on that front? I think the economy will start to come back pretty quickly. I think everybody's going to be eager to get out and doing their things. Employment, if you lost your job, are you going to get it right back? I think it's going to take some time for things to ramp up. I think 2021 is not going to be an instant, feeling better. Everything's better now year. I think mid-year we will start to see an uptick, but I think it will be slower than a lot of people wish it would be. Everybody's going to be enthusiastic and optimistic about it. I think that'll be good. Do I see it as being a catalyst to going up strongly? I think as people get back to work, they will be looking for more to consume on their commutes and things like that. Is it going to be a big, sharp increase? I don't know. I think it's going to be a very gradual climb, not a big hockey stick. And I think that's probably healthier for the economy in the long run and healthier for the industry, podcasting industry in the long run too. I do think that advertising revenues are going to continue a shift in the direction of narrowcasting targeted ads in podcasts rather than in more traditional media. I think that one of the things we've seen in people staying home more is the way we consume media has changed a lot, and people are consuming what they want to consume when they want to consume it. So the revenue structures are going to change in big media, especially. And I think you'll see, we already know the big media companies are making small media as well. I think we're going to see the bottom may fall out a little bit from underneath the very expensive television and film programming that's out there. Blockbuster film, eventually, when it's possible to go back to movie theaters, I think we'll see the tentpole kinds of movies, the big blockbusters coming back in a big way. Smaller independent films, I think, will skip that part of the process altogether and go right to the small audience stuff and the streaming and things like that. I mean, I think this has been a great year for companies like Amazon and Netflix. Amazon's done well, of course, because everybody's staying home and ordered. I mean, I did all my Christmas shopping. My family did all our Christmas shopping online. I don't think anybody went to a store at all in anticipation of gifts and things like that. So it's been good for that part of the economy. Podcasting, it's very hard to say. Very hard to say. Rick says, Blockbuster films, yes, perhaps. Blockbuster video, no. Yeah, Blockbuster video went the way of the dodo because they didn't pivot. They didn't adapt to changing marketplace quickly enough. And Netflix had them beat. Netflix ate their lunch. That was back in the days when, you could send a DVD through the mail. And that was Netflix's model. Netflix saw the writing on the wall when streaming started to be a thing, and they invested heavily in it. Blockbuster said, no, we want people to come to our stores. Look how that worked out. Brick and mortar, I think, is going to hurt. I think that service businesses will come back. Restaurants, hotels, destinations, venues, things like that will come back. But retail businesses, selling your products, making people come to your store to buy your stuff, I have my doubts about that. Offices, I think that fewer and fewer companies that would, have lots and lots of office space, unless you have a manufacturing plant, having a single physical presence for your workforce, we've proven it's no longer really necessary. Law firms, accounting firms, why do you need to have offices? And, this is one of the areas where I feel like I sort of was ahead of the curve because I've been working virtually for, a long time now. I started with a virtual office in 2001. I had my first virtual office. And I've worked from my home office or coffee shops or libraries, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so that I think we're going to see commercial real estate take a big hit. Residential real estate, probably also. I know that residential real estate in the big cities has taken a hit as people are not feeling the need to be close to a particular place of work, right? So Russell says, when Blockbuster went down, a guy at Hollywood Video told him he should buy stock big time. Should have bought puts like a fiend. You're right. That would have been something else. Yeah. Now that companies have retooled, Rick says, for virtual workspaces, that trend will likely continue. Yeah, I sure think so. And, we in the podcasting space, a lot of us have been doing this. Do you need to go to a brick and mortar studio to record a podcast episode? Of course not. Of course not. And I think, the music industry is starting to recognize, hey, you don't need to do it to record an album. Movie business, not so much. You got to have locations, you got to have sets, you got to bring people together to interact. And I think that's going to be, that faces a lot of challenges. We know that Tom Cruise had some issues on the set at Mission Impossible, is it number 7 or something that's shooting in England right now, where he had to yell at a bunch of the crew people who weren't observing proper protocols. And then apparently a bunch of crew people quit over him treating them that way, those kinds of things. But, he's looking out for a whole industry. He's saying, look, if we get shut down again, it's going to kill this business. So, and he's right. Got to keep making movies or else people are going to find something else to consume. When the television first came into being in the 40s and 50s and became the thing that everybody had in the home, there was all this alarm that this was going to kill the movie industry. And it changed the movie industry dramatically. But I've been joking. It only took 70, 80 years and a pandemic to kill the movie theater business. People aren't going to be going to the movie theaters like they used to. It's going to be only for the like I said, those blockbuster films, the ones where the theater going experience with the sense around shaking you in your seat kind of sound and all that is a necessary part of it, and the giant screens. But we're all getting used to watching on our small. I mean, look, how many people watch a movie entirely on their cell phone, right? We're living in a different world, and it's getting more differenter every day. I have been talking for about 40 minutes now, and hold on. Russell's asking another, a legal-ish question. Rick's drive-in movie theaters have come back. Do you have any legal-ish advice about forming the home studio? I know there are tax benefits, writing off a bit of your home for business use, but maybe there's some legal issues to discuss now or another time. The tax issues are significant. I mean, I'm in my home office. This home office represents probably about, let me think about it. Probably a little less than 10% of my home. And according to my accountants, that's what we write off as a business expense. We allocate 10% of the electricity and the heating cost and those kinds of things. All the housing expenses are allocated as business expenses for me. I also have a physical office that I don't get to go to. And those are other expenses. But it's all part of it. From a legal standpoint, if you're having other people coming to your home for your studio to record, then you have the issues around liability. If somebody slips and falls, your general homeowner's insurance policy isn't going to cover an injury sustained by what we call a business invitee to your home. So you probably want to look at getting some extra coverage if you're going to regularly have other people in the home to shoot in the studio, record in the studio, whatever else. But if it's just you, no, I don't think there's a lot of legal issues there. You might want to check with your homeowners association, your HOA rules. You might want to check with your local zoning. Business license issues might also come up if you're supposed to have a business. If you're using it to make money, if you're not having business traffic to the home, it may not be as big of an issue. Different cities, different local ordinances are going to affect those kinds of things. I recently heard that in Nashville, up until this year, it was actually illegal to have a recording studio in your home. And that was, a rule honored more in the breach than in the observance, apparently. But it was actually a violation of the law to have a recording studio in your home because, again, they didn't want lots of that sort of quasi-commercial traffic in the residential neighborhoods. That's changed. And I think for the better. We've all seen how, business doesn't have to be in one single place. That's a factory mentality of the early industrial age. And what else? Legal issues. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. Well, another area you want to think about with your insurance is business interruption insurance. If you're podcasting as a business and your studio is damaged or destroyed in a flood, a fire, something like that, you want to have some coverage for that because it's bad enough trying to get back on your feet after a loss like that of your home. But if it's also where you do your business and make your money, you're going to have some issues. So you want to have good coverage there. Insurance, not something we talk about a lot. There isn't, it's hard to get podcast insurance. It's possible, but it's hard to get. But if you're if you're running any kind of a business from your home, you got to think about having those extra riders and doing the stuff that needs to be done. Other legal issues, having employees come to your home, you got to think about workers' comp and those kinds of stuff, all that. So I'm going to think about that. If there's other stuff that relates to it, I will bring it up in a future episode. But for right now, I'm going to say thanks for watching. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and I want to wish you the happiest of New Year's. Let's make 2021 our bitch. 2020 was a bitch. Let's make 2021 ours, and really, turn things around and seize the opportunities and ignore the distractions and the disappointments. And with that, I'll say thanks for watching. I'll see you next year. Happy New Year.